Good morning, friends. In today's revision of carbohydrate metabolism, I will be discussing the question: explain the process of glycogenesis and glycogenolysis, add a note on its regulation. And the second question, which has come in the university exam, is the von Gurk's disease. Now, if you are asked a question on glycogenesis, it can come separately as glycogenesis or glycogenolysis, or both can come together, as you have seen in this question here. So how do we attempt it? So the first part is, what is glycogenesis? So let's define what is glycogenesis. Give the definition. It's the conversion of glucose to glycogen. Next, where does this synthesis of glycogen occur? The main organs of synthesis are the liver and the muscle. Now, in the muscle, the glycogen serves as a fuel reserve to generate ATP, whereas in the liver, it is mainly used for maintaining the blood glucose concentration, particularly in the fasting state. Next, we go to the steps of glycogenesis. The first step of glycogenesis is the phosphorylation of glucose to glucose 6-phosphate. This can be done by two enzymes. The enzyme in the muscle is the hexokinase, whereas the enzyme in the liver is glucokinase. So once glucose 6-phosphate is formed, it is acted by the enzyme phosphoglucomutase and converted to glucose 1-phosphate. Glucose 1-phosphate then gets converted to UDP glucose with the help of the enzyme UDPG pyrophosphorylase. In this process, UTP is converted to pyrophosphate. So, first step is the conversion of glucose to glucose 6-phosphate. Muscle, the enzyme is hexokinase, whereas in the liver, the enzyme is glucokinase. Once glucose 6-phosphate is formed, it is then converted to glucose 1-phosphate by the action of the enzyme phosphoglucomutase. Once glucose 1-phosphate is formed, what happens? This glucose is added on to UTP. That is, UTP loses one pyrophosphate molecule and gets converted to UDPG. This is done by the action of the enzyme UDPG pyrophosphorylase. Now, the main enzyme for glycogen synthesis is glycogen synthase. But this enzyme cannot keep on adding glucose initially. Okay, it cannot initiate the chain synthesis of glycogen using free glucose. So it cannot be an acceptor for starting off the synthesis of glycogen. It can only elongate an existing glycogen chain, or it can add on glucose to a primer molecule. Now, this primer molecule can either be a fragment of glycogen, or it can be a 37 kilodeltal protein, which is known as glycogenin. So, this glycogenin or a fragment of glycogen can act as a primer or an initiator of glycogen synthesis. Now, this glycogenin, which is a 37 kilodeltan protein, can act both as an enzyme and a substrate at the same time. So it takes up glucose residues from the UDP glucose, which we saw how is it synthesized in the previous slide. The glycogenin keeps on adding glucose, and the chain gets elongated by about 7 glucose residues, okay, to form that glycogen primer. Once that glycogen primer is formed, then the enzyme glycogen synthase comes into action and begins the synthesis of glycogen by extending this primer. Okay, so for the initiation of glycogen synthesis, you either require a fragment of glycogen or you require this 37 kilodeltal protein, which is known as glycogen. Now, what does this glycogenin do? It picks up the glucose from UDP glucose and it extends the chain by 7 glucose residues And this forms the glycogen primer, and once the glycogen primer is formed, then the glycogen synthase, which is the main enzyme for glycogen synthesis, will now come into action and begin adding on glucose units and extending this primer. So this figure gives you very elegantly the process of the initiation process of glycogen synthesis. So look at the left side, you have first is formation of glucose 6-phosphate. By the action of the enzyme phosphoglucomutase, you have the formation of glucose 1-phosphate. Then by the action of UTP, which gets converted to pyrophosphate, you have the attachment of glucose to UDP, so that becomes UDP glucose. Now this UDP glucose is now transferring the glucose unit to the initiator molecule, which is glycogen. Then it keeps on, this keeps repeating, and finally you find that the primer molecule is now formed. And once the primer molecule is formed, then it can keep on adding glucose units with the help of the enzyme glycogen synthase. Now the glycogen synthase can only form 1,4-glycosidic linkages at the non-reducing outer end of the primer molecule. So the chain is elongated only in a linear fashion. But as you know, glycogen is not a linear molecule, it is a branched molecule. So how does the branching occur? When the chain has become long, it becomes about 11 residues, there is another enzyme known as the branching enzyme will transfer a segment of 6 glucose residues to the same or neighboring chain, forming a branch point. So this branching enzyme forms a 1,6 linkage. Again, the non-reducing ends are further elongated with the help of glycogen synthase. And again, once 11 residues are formed, another branch is produced with the help of the branching enzyme. Okay, so you have to remember that glycogen synthase will only form the 1,4-glycosidic linkage, and to get a branch, you need another enzyme which is known as the branching enzyme. So this figure very elegantly shows how the branching occurs. You see that once the chain is elongated by about 11 residues, so here the chain has elongated by 11 residues, then what happens? It picks up 6 residues, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 residues are picked up, and it goes to a neighboring chain and forms a branch. And this branch is being formed by the enzyme, the branching enzyme. Okay, this branching enzyme is also known as amylo 1,4,1,6 transglucosidase. Now, so these are the steps for glycogenesis which you have to write, and the figure is very important. Without the figure, there is no use, you will not get the marks for the exam. Now let's look at what is glycogenolysis. Glycogenolysis is the breakdown of glycogen to glucose, and this was put forward by 2 scientists, Carl Corey and Gerty Corey, and the process is not a reversal of synthesis, but an independent set of enzymes is required. So in this process, what happens? There is a shortening of the chain. The first enzyme to act is the glycogen phosphorylase. Now what does the glycogen phosphorylase do? It will cleave the 1,4-glycosidic linkage between the glucose residues at the non-reducing end of the glycogen chain by simple phosphorylations, and that is done with the help of the enzyme glycogen phosphorylase, and what is produced is glucose 1-phosphate. Okay, this continues till 4 glucose units remain on each chain before a branch point. So this is the shortening of chain. So here we have in the first part we find that there are 3 glucose residues here, 1, 2, 3, linked by the 1,4-glucosidic linkage. The glycogen phosphorylase is going to break the 1,4-glycosidic linkage, and each time it will remove the glucose as glucose 1-phosphate. Okay, so this chain is shortened by 1 glucose, so you have remaining 2 glucose units here. So next we have to have a debranching enzyme. So we have to remove the sugar units at the branch points. So the debranching enzyme is a bifunctional enzyme. It has 2 enzyme activities, and it is known as oligo-1,4,1,4 glucan transferase. So it removes the outer 3 of the 4 glucosal residues attached at one of the branches, and the 3 residues are transferred to the non-reducing end of the other branch and lengthens it. So an alpha-1,4 bond is broken and an alpha-1,4 bond is made. So the enzyme functions as a 4,4 transferase. So this figure explains the process of glycogenolysis. Here we find that the phosphorylase has continuously kept on removing or cutting the alpha-1,4 linkages on both these branches. So what is remaining behind is around 4 residues at the branch points. Now from one of the branches, 3 of these glucose residues are transferred to the other branch, which lengthens this branch, but it leaves 1 sugar unit here at the branch point. This is then removed by a amylo 1,6-glucosidase enzyme, and so you are left with only this branch, which is then acted upon by glycogen phosphorylase until finally you have the complete breakdown of glycogen. So now what happens to the glucose 1-phosphate? The glucose 1-phosphate can be converted to by the enzyme phosphoglucomutase to glucose 6-phosphate. In the muscle, glucose 6-phosphate is the end product because the enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase is absent in the muscle. Whereas in the liver and the kidney, the glucose 6-phosphate is further hydrolyzed to glucose by the enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase. So these are the steps that you have to give for glycogenesis and glycogenolysis depending upon the question. The figures, as I told you, is very important because it will explain exactly how the branching is done in the case of glycogenesis and the debranching is done in the case of glycogenolysis. Next we come to the regulation. That was the second aspect of the question. Now, why is regulation important? Because it is important to maintain the blood sugar levels. So the synthesis and degradation has to be tightly controlled. Now in the liver, glycogenesis will increases during the well-fed state. That is when you have had a good carbohydrate diet, then glycogenesis will increase. And glycogenolysis, that is the breakdown of glycogen, occurs during periods of fasting. In the muscle, on the other hand, glycogenolysis occurs when you do active exercise, whereas glycogenesis begins when the muscle is at rest. Now, regulation occurs at 2 important levels. One is the hormonal level and the other is allosteric mechanism of regulation. Now, first let's look at the hormonal mechanism of regulation, and this is through the formation of cyclic AMP. And this is brought about by the hormones epinephrine and glucagon. Okay, so binding of epinephrine and glucagon to certain receptors will cause the activation of the enzyme adenylase cyclase, and this catalyzes the formation of cyclic AMP. This cyclic AMP then activates the cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase A. Now, phosphorylase kinase exists in two forms, an inactive form B and an active form A. The active phosphorylase kinase will now phosphorylase the inactive form and convert it to the active form. So, phosphorylation converts the inactive form B to the active form A. The phosphorylated enzyme can, however, be dephosphorylated by protein phosphatase 1, and this is promoted by the other hormone, that is insulin, which has an opposite action to that of glucagon. Now, next is the activation of glycogen phosphorylase. Glycogen phosphorylase exists in two forms, the dephosphorylated inactive form B and the phosphorylated active form A. Now, the enzyme phosphorylase kinase, which has been activated, now converts the glycogen phosphorylase to its active form, active A form, and this in turn will carry out the glycogenolysis, that is the breakdown of glycogen to ultimately produce glucose. Now, phosphorylase A can be converted to the inactive form phosphorylase B by the help of protein phosphatase, and as I told you, this will be promoted by insulin, which has an action opposite to that of glucagon. Now, the protein phosphatases can in turn be inhibited by several inhibitor proteins. So, this is during exercise or during the fasting state when you have the breakdown of glycogen. So, glucagon in the liver or epinephrine and in the muscle or liver will bind to certain receptors. These are G protein activated, and this then activates the enzyme adenylate cyclase, which converts ATP to cyclic AMP. The cyclic AMP in turn will convert the inactive protein kinase A to the active protein kinase A. The active protein kinase A will now phosphorylate the inactive enzyme phosphorylase kinase to the active form, that is B form is converted to the active form A form. This in turn will convert phosphorylase B, glycogen phosphorylase B, which is in the inactive state, to the active state, that is glycogen phosphorylase A, which then converts glycogen to glucose 1-phosphate and ultimately it then converts it to glucose. Okay. This protein kinase A simultaneously will suppress glycogen synthesis. So, when glycogenolysis is going on, then glycogenesis is suppressed, and this suppresses glycogenesis by converting the active glycogen synthase A to its inactive form, okay, thereby preventing the synthesis of glycogen. So, this is known as the reciprocal regulation of glycogen. That is, when one is going on, the other is repressed. So, the inhibition of the glycogen synthesis is also done by cyclic AMP, as I told you. Glycogen synthesis, as you have seen in the previous slide, occurs in two forms, the active A form and the inactive B form. The active form is dephosphorylated and the inactive form is phosphorylated. So, the phosphorylation is carried out by protein kinases, which is regulated by cyclic AMP. So, this is a cyclic AMP regulated process whereby the protein kinases become active and they convert the active glycogen synthase A to the inactive glycogen synthase B by phosphorylating it. Okay, so once it becomes the inactive form, it can no longer continue to synthesize glycogen. So, glycogen synthesis will be inhibited. Now, if you want to start the process of glycogen synthesis, then it is acted upon by the enzyme protein phosphatase 1, and that is stimulated by the hormone insulin, which has an opposite effect to that of glucagon or epinephrine. So this is also known as the cascade reaction. So it's just like a cascade or like a waterfall. The cascade reactions result in glycogenolysis, and the large number of steps are important because it will amplify the hormonal signal. So on the left side you have the process of glycogenolysis going on, and on the right side you have the inhibition of glycogen synthesis. The next mode of regulation of glycogen synthesis, which you will have to briefly describe, both synthesis and degradation, is the allosteric mechanism. So apart from the hormones which regulate the enzymes glycogen synthase and phosphorylase, these enzymes also respond to allosteric modulators and energy demands. So in the well-fed state, the enzyme glycogen synthase B in both liver and muscle cell is allosterically activated by the substrate glucose 6-phosphate. Okay, so in the liver, so on the right hand side you can see that both in the liver and the muscles you find that glucose 6-phosphate is activating the process of glycogenesis in the well-fed state. In contrast, the glycogen phosphorylase, that is the reverse reaction, that is the breakdown of glycogen, is inhibited by glucose 6-phosphate and ATP. So they are negative modulators for the breakdown of glycogen to glucose 1-phosphate. Now in the liver but not in the muscle, glucose can inhibit the breakdown of glycogen to glucose 1-phosphate. So it inhibits the enzyme glycogen phosphorylase in the liver but not in the muscle. So when you are asked about regulation, you have to mention both the hormonal regulation and the allosteric regulation. The important enzymes for synthesis is glycogen synthase, and for breakdown of glycogen it is phosphorylase. The next question which can be asked is the glycogen storage disorder type 1. You may be asked a 5-mark question on that, which is also known as the von Gertz disease. Whenever you're given a disorder, you have to give the affected enzyme. The affected enzyme is glucose 6-phosphatase. The tissue which is affected is both the liver and the kidney. What are the clinical features? You have accumulation of glycogen. Large quantities of glycogen are formed. They are stored in the hepatocytes, they are stored in the renal and intestinal mucosal cells. This results in enlargement of the liver, which is known as hepatomegaly, and the kidneys also become enlarged if the kidneys are involved. So typical symptoms here you have, and the laboratory data also indicates that you will have hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is a very typical feature, neonatal hypoglycemia. Along with that, this is because the glucose 6-phosphate cannot be converted to glucose because the enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase is deficient. So this results in hypoglycemia. It also results in lactic acidosis and ketosis. Enlargement of the liver is there, which I told you, hepatomegaly. You can have overproduction of uric acid, that is hyperuricemia and gout, and you have also overproduction of lipids, hyperlipidemia. Lipids may accumulate in the cheeks, so you have chubby cheeks, so it's known as a doll facies. What is the type of treatment you can give? To avoid hypoglycemia, you have to give a continuous carbohydrate intake, that is frequent meals. In case of infants, every 2 to 3 hours, and school-going children 4 to 6 hours. We have to give slowly resorbed carbohydrates, that is raw uncooked starch, very limited fructose, lactose and no sucrose at all. and nights there should be a continuous intake of glucose polymers. Sometimes we have to use a nasogastric tube.